So this is a case study of multidisciplinary nutrition intervention in a type 2 diabetic client post limb amputation. The client name was Pradeep Sharma and I was the nutritionist. The client's age was 63-year-old male. Location was he stays in Vellore. He is currently in an online nutrition program. Weight is 50-60 kgs. Compared to height, he is in underweight category. The start date with WildFit is 31st of Jan. Before that, all the procedures, the limb amputation was done, and he was an vegetarian. The dietary preference was vegetarian. So first, I'll cover a summary of the old details before getting admitted here. Just a small summary. Like 1st to 14 Jan, client was experiencing pain on and off since 1.5 months, which got aggravated with high fever and chills for 2 days. Client already had an history in 2023 August of severe urinary infection, and there was a surgical history of right scrotal abscess in 2023 November. Inguinal hernia history was also there in 2005, and here the NCS for both of the lower limb was done on 30th December 2024. NCS as in there's a procedure that is used to detect if the blood supply is good. So the process said that it was the case of sensory motor polyneuropathy. 6th Jan, CT angio was planned. So bilateral lower limb CT angio was planned, and the patient was also scheduled for peripheral angioplasty and stenting. So after CT, whatever the results were, the patient was scheduled for that. 7th Jan, there were complaints of breathlessness and required respiratory support. The CT chest was done therein because these were the symptoms. So fluid overload was seen in lungs, that is called pulmonary edema in form of smooth interlobular septal thickening. The septum was thickened with the mucus, and moderate bilateral pleural effusion with collapse consolidation of underlying lung segments. Like the certain lung segments had a lot of water in it due to septal thickening and a lot of mucus, so thick fluid, I would say. And due to that, the heart was also overworking because heart and lung work in sync with each other, and that is the reason the client also faced cardiomegaly and hypertension, because the both of heart and the lungs contribute to converting the deoxygenated blood to oxygenated one. But these things were managed in a conservative way after getting that it was a fluid overload or a pulmonary edema situation. So after the CT, 9th Jan, the peripheral angiogram was done, and post that the plasty was scheduled and plasty was done. It was a catheter guided, as in there was a thrombus where catheter is inserted, and they move away the thrombus or break the thrombus, and thrombectomy was done, that is called as thrombectomy, and that way a stenting was done inside in the lower limbs, the periphery basically. So highlights of the case was that 1st Jan 2025, the primary diagnosis for client was acute on chronic CKD, peripheral vascular disease, due to which peripheral angioplasty was done. Peripheral as in the lower body. Diabetes mellitus type 2, uncontrolled sugars. Hypertension, old stroke of 2017 history was there. 14 Jan, the client got discharged, and the diagnosis still remains the same, and hypertension was just added with the post-surgical history of peripheral angioplasty and stenting. The comorbidities that patient carried was diabetes mellitus, hypertension on regular treatment, history of scrotal abscess, inguinal hernia, and lower urinary tract infection was of course there. Again 26 Jan, the patient complained of pain in the lower limb for 5 days back to back. 1 month prior, developed pain and discoloration was seen over right heel, which progressed to gangrene. And gangrene is basically nothing but the cells get black, discolored, it becomes green and then black. It means that the cell death is happening there. Initially treated outside the hospital with angioplasty and stenting, but now they had to get admitted again, and post procedure the pain again aggravated, and it in the recent 5 days it got worsened, and the signs of worsening, that is gangrene, was seen and discoloration was seen. Again, the patient was a known history of diabetes, hypertension, chronic kidney disease was a query because it was considered as acute. So acute as in something which can be in the acute phase or in the initial phase, and so chronic kidney disease was a query, and he was a reformed smoker. Timeline of events, reports done on particular dates like 21st Jan, 22nd Jan, 25th Jan, 27th Jan, 6th Feb and 8th July. These reports in January were done back to back, considering that the surgery was done and how was the body reacting post surgery, or because post surgery generally the body is under stress and the body might react in a different way, other organs might react in a negative way, which happened in his case. So the reports were done in the back to back post surgery. First admission, the date was 1 to 14th Jan, where CT and peripheral angioplasty was done. Second admission was 22nd to 29th Jan, where amputation was done on 25th to be very specific. Then 31st Jan he started with the wild fit diet. So this is the sequence or timeline of events. After that he was admitted certain times, but 21st March was the severe event that he got admitted, or a severe episode that he got admitted for urine infection. Diagnoses were diabetes mellitus, uncontrolled sugars, was on insulin, systemic hypertension, diabetic retinopathy, CLTI, that is chronic limb threatening ischemia. It was NSTI, that is necrotizing soft tissue infection. It was like CLTI means like right lower limb. It is the most severe form of peripheral arterial disease where blood flow is reduced and chronic pain are there, non-healing wounds are there, which can lead to ulcer, gangrene, and risk of amputation if not treated, which happened in his case. So first he was detected with CLTI, that was treated with angioplasty. Later it progressed to NSTI, that was again the same lower limb. It is called as flesh eating disease, rapidly progressing with lot of bacterial infection, destroyed skin, fat, fascia, and in some case the muscle it reaches the muscle by layer, destroying layer by layer. A poor blood supply worsened the infection with risk of sepsis and death. He was almost on the verge of sepsis but not went exactly into the sepsis stage. Bilateral knee under popliteal block was there. The block was the reason they had to do plasty. PAD, of course, peripheral artery disease. He was also detected for hypothyroidism. Chronic kidney disease was confirmed later on, and of course stroke history was there of 2018. So present health concerns, the health concerns that the patient had currently was type 2 diabetes mellitus with uncontrolled sugars, which led to amputation and lot of insulin units. UTI, urine incontinence, there was some nerve damage in the urinary tract that lead to difficulty in passing urine, and so catheter was inserted and he was on that catheter, and due to which he was experiencing frequent urine infection. Diabetic nephropathy was there, wherein AKI on CKD was detected. Initially it was acute kidney disease or injury, later on it became chronic post surgery. So no protein was suggested by nephrologists. Klebsiella SPP bacteria infection was there in the urine, in the urinary tract. Chronic liver disease was also seen. Sepsis, initial stage of sepsis was seen. PAD, of course, peripheral arterial occlusive disease, blockage in the arteries due to atherosclerosis. And atherosclerosis was because of uncontrolled sugars, because blood was kind of in a the consistency of blood was thickened. GI issues due to medication, low muscle mass, low appetite, chewing issues were seen. Medical and surgical history. So the process that was done was CT chest was first done, to where pulmonary edema was detected, as I showed in the initial summary, and due to which mild cardiomegaly was also there, and pulmonary hypertension was also there, because those were the places where water was filled. So heart and lung had to work tremendously in over position or in a compromised position. That is the reason it also caused hypertension. Peripheral angioplasty and stenting was done on 9 Jan. Then amputation was done on 25th of Jan because the indication was prior CLTI, then NSTI, and then severe infection likely from diabetes related foot complications. So diabetic foot basically. The insulin charts, I have a record of the Excel that shows how much insulin he was taking, what was the sugars, what was the meals that he was preferring, fluid intake and urine output. यहाँ पे what I've mentioned is insulin blood sugars were significantly elevated at all points of time, especially post meal. It went up to 500 as well. Fasting sugars were also more than 250 due to overnight poor control. Insulin doses were increasing day by day from 14 to 16 to 18, but blood sugar was still remaining high. The insulin was not working on the body. And a reference chart I would be showing after the case presentation so that everyone has an idea about it. 10th February, nephrology opinion was taken because the kidney parameters were deranged. So diagnosis was AKI on CKD, left kidney agenesis, and diabetic kidney disease. So the most biggest reason, two big reasons of progressing of him to disease, kidney disease is ek to uncontrolled sugar, and second was the surgery that caused him that trauma, that kidney went into correction, or we can say that kidney was functioning slow or not enough function was seen from kidneys end. Also there are the glands on the kidney that actually absorb shock. So post surgery, generally in some cases kidney does get affected, and a patient can go into AKI or CKD due to not being able to absorb that shock. Urinary issues were there, incontinence and LUTS. LUTS was also there, the infection. He was advised to continue diabetic meals, monitor renal function, and of course maintain the BP, because BP was also going high, and due to which doctor advised salt restriction. Blood pressure that time was 122/68 and pulse was 68 per minute. Post 10 February, ongoing medications was recommended, strict blood sugar control was recommended, and regular BP monitoring, HbA1c every 3 months, lipid profile every 6 months, foot care, eye care, diabetic diet, insulin with statins and antiplatelet medications was recommended. So these are the insulin charts that I had got. So basically if you see, the sugars are always going 394, 258, 223, 275, always in a higher side, and insulin dosage are also mentioned, 15 unit, 16 unit, 17 unit. So this is a basically a hospital paper that always records the sugars, fasting, postprandial, insulin units. 8 July, a sonography was done where grade 2 fatty liver with early chronic liver disease was detected. There was a scan done, scan suggested for liver fibrosis assessment. There was a drug induced eosinophilia as well, so eosinophils were rising. When the drug was stopped, it was suspected that it was because of drug. When that was stopped, it was improving. Medications, these are the medications that the client was taking. So medications post, like from during till during the surgery of amputation till post. What about the medications? It was mostly the antibiotics, which are helping for infections or sepsis. It was mostly the hypertension medications, statins for thyroid, protection for liver. So medications for liver, the statins as I told. So these were some of the medications. I will just take you through again. So these are the medications for 21st of March where the client got admitted for urine infection. So a lot of medications. Along with all the infections and already the organ functioning being in compromised position, lot of medications was adding load. As per a clinical nutritionist, but as per a doctor, definitely it is not adding any load, and they keep on adding lot of medications, but they do not give an agreement to addition of supplements. So this is the 8 July. 8 July is the recent medication that I've added, considering this is the post-surgery medication after the prosthetic leg fitting was done recently. So biochemical parameters. So I've given certain parameters, certain important reports only that were necessary or that were recorded. So if you see 22nd January, the HbA1c was 9. The alkaline phosphatase was 73.9 and creatinine was 2.18. Also, it indicated that there was a lot of glucose, high glucosuria in urine, and very much bacteria in the urine. Urine culture was also taken. That is the reason Klebsiella SPP was detected. That's a infection, like urinary infection. Sonography, as I told, detected chronic liver disease, and of course catheterization was done. So patient was on catheter to pass urine. 25th January reports also suggested proteinuria and suggested that kidney dysfunction is there because of proteinuria. CRP was high, indicating inflammation. On 25th January reports it says. Even 6th February reports also confirm that Klebsiella growth still persists, it is not gone, and pus cells were there, and again proteinuria is again confirmed on the 6th of February as well. So they were doing reports frequently to understand that if it is gone or it is reducing, but still things persists. 8th February, of course, the creatinine came down. So initially in January it was 2.18, and in February it came down to 1.76. Still high, but still due to diet and lifestyle change it improved to a great extent. 10 February again there was one of the procedures that confirmed UTI with bacterial infection, CLD, chronic liver disease, urine retention, high WBC and RBC in urine. Because patient had catheterization, generally in catheter patient also release some kinds of cells, that is immune cells and red blood cells. This is the 2nd March report where HbA1c is reduced. If you see here, 22nd January the HbA1c was 9, and 2nd March the HbA1c came down to 6.6, which is a good improvement. And if you see, the creatinine was on 22nd January 2.18. The creatinine on 8 February was 1.76, and on 2nd March it was 1.58, which improved to a great extent from January till first week of March, or second day of March I would say. GFR, eGFR was still low. Liver parameters were now rising. So kidney was improving but liver was rising, and lot of things going on in the body. So all these parameters are going high and low, but some functions were actually improving, some were deteriorating. Because medications were there, client was in high traumatic phase due to post surgery, severe surgery, the organ is lost from the one of the parts of the body is lost, so that created a lot of stress on the body. TSH also went high, that was 13.73. anyways the medication was added of course after this, but yes, post 2nd March the medication was added, that is Thyronorm 50 mcg. D3 was low, but no supplementation was taken up from no advice of supplementation was taken up from the nutritionist, considering doctor had said no. Dietary recall, a client used to consume breakfast 1 bowl poha or upma, very less appetite. Lunch again little rice and dal, 1 chapati and little vegetable. Same for dinner, and snacks biscuits or processed packet foods. My intervention of recall was appetite was low, very choosy and irritable to eat, always want to eat processed and packet foods. The meals were not balanced as per the clinical conditions that he was facing, and even the advice given from the hospital dietitian in Vellore was that you can eat sago khichdi. So that was one of the advices that was given, which was not suitable as per the clinical conditions in a diabetic client. All processed and packet food, as I told, given in mid meals or snacks. The key strategies that I had for management of high blood sugars was focusing on low GI foods, that is mostly high fiber, soluble, insoluble. Control of carbs intake, like complex carbs should be given. Of course, the portion should be managed, and pairing with proteins and healthy fats. The meal pattern should be consistent with carb counting and not change, like aaj ek roti kha liya, kal do kha liya. That should not be the case, otherwise I would not have been able to control the high blood sugar. So portions of course mattered a lot here, at least they carried the most importance. Prioritizing protein rich foods, because protein will help in slow glucose release, and of course healthy fats would also help to a much great extent. So the intervention that I did in terms of why the sugar levels are fluctuating, like why are the fluctuations. So I was checking for the hidden cause of fluctuations, where one of them was dawn phenomenon, like blood sugar spikes in the early morning due to hormone release. And this can also be because the dinner that was consumed, that was high in carbs, and that is the reason the patient was going in a dawn phenomenon, like the moment there is like sun rising up, or around in the morning, the hormones used to get released, and of course the blood sugar spike was seen. So Mugi effect was one of my intervention, where rebound hyperglycemia from night time low glycemia was seen. तो night में अगर hypo में चले जाता है या low sugar में चले जाता है, so then hyperglycemia was seen, that is called as a Somogyi effect. Because of the hypo, it went into hyper. Gastroparesis, this was my intervention, so that is the reason it is mentioned if applicable. So the stomach emptying was delayed, and that caused erratic sugar levels. Of course, stress and cortisol levels were too high, that caused insulin resistance. Infection and inflammation was severely high, that could have been one of the reasons. And for spike in the blood sugar level. Optimize meal composition, so basically protein and fat timings, so pairing them with carbs, the protein and healthy fats, helps to lower the sugar spikes. Meal gaps, not keeping long meal gaps between meals, that causes reactive sugar rising. So I was assuming that these things could have been there, जिसके वजह से blood sugar काफ़ी high जा रहा है even after giving a good amount of insulin. Dairy and whey, I was I was analyzing that this could be one of the reasons. I did not just analyze and intervene, but I of course made changes as per these analyzation. Hydration and electrolytes. Dehydration can lead to high blood sugars. Ensure adequate magnesium and potassium and sodium balance, that can lead to high blood sugars. Then insulin, type of insulin and timing also matters. So basal versus bolus. Patient using long acting basal or bolus correctly. The injection sites, that was to be revised or seen that if it is effective enough to cause the absorption. The pre-meal insulin might need better matching with carb absorption. So if it is given right on time, if right dosage is given. So all these things were analyzed and informed them so that they should make changes as per that. The strategies that the suggestions that I gave for diabetic nephropathy, that is kidney disease caused by diabetes, was reducing potassium from foods. It was crucial for us because potassium was rising and that could have been risky in terms of high potassium can cause heart attacks, and hyperkalemia can at least of course lead to heart attacks. That's called as high potassium levels. So leaching method was suggested, where it was suggested to peel and cut the veggies to small, then soak in water, then double boiling method, boil excess, strain, and then drain and boil again in fresh water, again discard the water. Long process, but it was suggested to work around potassium levels. And suggestions were given to choose low potassium foods like vegetables and fruits as mentioned on the slide, and refined grains over whole grains were asked to take so as to again avoid the glucose spike or avoid the potassium from those grains. Cooking techniques were suggested to reduce potassium: pressure cooking and boiling. Avoid cooking in small water quantities because that would retain most of the potassium. Then avoid cooking in the soups and broths, of course, because potassium leaches into the water, so discarding the liquid was suggested. And to reduce the potassium levels, as mentioned in the earlier slide, the same was recommended here as well. Portion control, as I mentioned, portion control and frequency, that was taken care of. So sticking to half katori if at all they are having potassium rich. Potassium was mostly focused. Why? Because potassium was going tremendously high. It was not coming in control. So potassium was mostly focused, but creatine was also kept in control as a part of the clinical management. So limit high potassium foods to 2 to 3 times with controlled portions, of course. That's the 4th point. 5th point, potassium rich additives and processed foods were advised to avoid, like salt substitutes were advised. Salt substitutes may contain potassium chloride. So if the client is experiencing, of course the salt was restricted, so the client was also experiencing that bland taste, so other techniques were suggested instead of salt substitutes. Avoid packaged and canned foods. Often there are hidden potassium additives therein. The general guidelines, other than the specific guidelines that were given, was that fiber and protein will help avoid the sugar spike. So make sure to include that. Meal timings are to be followed to maintain sugar. Constipation can cause fluctuations, so constipation was advised to get in control. The veggies needed to be either boiled, steamed, cooked or blanched for the potassium levels to come to normal. Oil suggestion was given for coconut oil and ghee so that rest to liver can be given. And insulin shots I was trying to reduce by 2 points and maintain it for 4 to 5 days so that body adapts and maintains the sugar, starts to maintain the sugar. For millets, it was advised to soak and use them to avoid sugar spike and increase in potassium. Healthy fats in form of nuts and seeds were advised to add. Portions as per calculations of the parameters and clinical conditions was advised to keep in check. Of course, high potassium foods list were given and was asked to avoid, like banana, avocado, orange, papaya, pomegranate, spinach, potato, sweet potato, tomato, chole, rajma, chavli, pista, pumpkin, seeds, dark chocolate, coconut water. And if at all the potassium rich, the client was rigid, so if at all they are consuming, so portion restriction was advised. Challenges that I had were that understanding the snack meal option, as the patient or people around him were providing him with a lot of processed snacks. chivda, biscuits, fruit, khakra, which were not advised from my end, of course. So that was a challenge for me, that understanding those snack meal option and getting an idea of if they are actually consuming it and how much in quantity, because they were consuming, I know that. So initial challenge was to derive information also, because each and every detail from clients, caregivers end was not provided to me. Then client getting off the snack meal, access, no, I advised them to take the access of certain foods from him, because he was getting rigid and wanted to actually eat it. The daughter, being an old member of Wildfit, she had complete nutrition knowledge and what nutrition could do, but she could lack nutrition support or giving them an understanding, because they were not actually staying here, and it was difficult for them, or it was difficult for her to make them understand how nutrition can actually help them. And of course, connecting on a very frequent basis or frequent follow-ups in the initial phase, because diet could not be changed, but connecting on a frequent basis can happen. And of course, there was a language barrier. Of course, there was doctor's advice that was impacting. That was a challenging situation, because doctor was rigid, considering lowering the insulin units to working around giving any supplements. So this is a gist of the follow-up, the challenges and progress. So if you see, first follow-up, my challenges were fiber and protein inclusion, constipation was there, catheter was there, high stress was there when pain was triggered. Snack meal became a challenge as high sugars were there post that. And in the second follow-up, the challenges reduced and it came to like only 3 challenges. That is, disturbed sleep was there, supplements of course were not allowed by doctor, and snack meal was still a challenge. Progress from first to second follow-up was, first my wound started drying and improving. He was getting mentally and emotionally stable and able to face the situation, accept and follow things. And renal function was improving, as I showed the creatine levels in the reports, and it is mentioned down there that 22nd January and 8th February comparison of creatine. And of course, urine output was also improving. The progress in the second follow-up was, insulin units were reduced from 13 to 11. So we started with around 17, 18 and it came down by second follow-up to 11 units. Approximately 15-20 days, I would say, first to second follow-up gap. Third follow-up to fourth follow-up, the challenges that I saw was insulin units had to increase again due to infection and swelled up testicles. He got admitted for UTI. The snack meal again still was a challenge. 4th May, the supplements of course was not taken even after insisting. The sugars increased when snack meal was taken in form of biscuits, popcorn and processed snacks. Progress in 3rd and 4th was compared in a way that sleep was improved, constipation improved. So the factors that I mentioned in the intervention, that because of these factors the sugar could have been rising, that was actually eradicated, and constipation was one of them. So I gave enough options also for snack. And in fourth follow-up, the catheter was removed 2 months back only in the May. So by fourth follow-up, I got to know that catheter was removed 2 months back. As I mentioned, that there was a communication gap. Prosthetic leg fitting was done. The process was started, but again it was an on and off process due to his wound becoming moist or having some amount of fluid in it, and constipation was completely gone. These are the nutrition plans. Let me know if when you want me to change the slide. So this was the first nutrition plan. Then second, did not change much in calories or in the menu. It's just I added certain things and deleted certain things from first to second. Portions were also increased from first to second as clients' appetite went high. Can I move to next slide? So this is the third and the fourth nutrition plan, wherein again very minimal changes. So just following a diet with minimal changes, of course with certain restrictions depending on condition, helped him to get out of things well. This was the last plan that was shared. The client is currently ongoing with us, and plans are being shared, follow-ups and updates are still being taken. So the specialist that they had to consult is ophthalmologist, urologist, infection specialist, endocrinologist, hepatologist, and cardiologist. The simple reason of giving this slide is that when a lifestyle change is not done at the right time and it aggravates to a severe disease, line down the years, of course. The body gets impacted in a very negative way, and each an organ gets impacted, and that is the reason I've mentioned this slide for that. Thank you. So just would want to show so just would be showing the sheet that is showing that how I recorded the insulin units and how was the Excel sheet prepared. So this is the sheet that showed that how it has of course fasting blood sugar, postprandial blood sugar, like post breakfast, post lunch, and post dinner, the menu that he was taking in the breakfast, lunch, and dinner, the insulin units during these 3 times, and of course the fluid intake was there, how much was the urine output. This I had to analyze because the client went into CKD. How was the BP, because BP was also rising. So this sheet was thankfully maintained by their caretakers. When the client used to get admitted to hospital, the sheets kind of were not filled, but other time definitely the sheets were filled, and I had a clear picture of if we are progressing towards good or no. So yeah, that's it from my end. Thank you so much everyone for patient listening.